Lord of the harvest, all around us are men and women, boys and girls who do not know you, who do not know that their sins can be forgiven, and whose lives lack their truest meaning and deepest purpose. Have mercy on them and awaken us to their need. May we, as a church and as individuals, reach out to them in love with the message of the gospel, that Jesus Christ died for their sins and was raised for their transformation, that they and we might both have new life and hope for eternity, freed from guilt and from the fear of death. In the power of your Holy Spirit, may we do this in many right and appropriate ways, devoting to the task our personal, financial, and creative resources, our love, our time, our energy, and our priorities. Make us a generous and open community, loving and serving both old friends and newcomers, so that Jesus may be glorified and many souls added to his kingdom through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. So our word today is meaningful. And this is how we're defining that. The church, always expecting newcomers and inquirers to be present in its life, will be constantly on its game. It will be welcoming. It will make its values, both congregational and denominational, transparent. It will make its message accessible. And it will provide specific ways for people to connect and take the next steps in the spiritual life. Last week I told you that my first stop on sabbatical tour of churches was at a church in Washington, D.C., Holy Comforter St. Cyprian Roman Catholic Parish, African-American congregation, about 8 blocks from the Capitol, going out towards the Navy Yards, kind of in a residential neighborhood of brownstones, a historically black congregation, but a congregation that, while having been in decline, has now experienced something of a rebirth. And a big part of that has to do with the way that their pastor, Monsignor Charles Pope, has helped them to claim the evangelistic part of their congregational DNA, about how they, as Catholic Christians, have as a part of their very identity a commitment to the work of evangelism. One of the things that happened in the service, I worshiped with them 4 times over 2 days, and in each of the services, a really unusual thing happened about 2/3 of the way through the worship service. It was a Mass, a Lord's Supper service every time I was with them. And after they'd done all of the stuff that you do in a Catholic liturgy of consecrating the bread and consecrating the wine and doing all those preparation prayers, right before they brought the elements down from the Lord's table, the Monsignor Pope went off script. He left the liturgy. And he stood up and he turned to his ushers. This is an African-American congregation, and so the ushers are all there in the same colored suits, and they have white gloves on their hands. And he says to them, ushers, open the doors. And smartly, every usher stands up in the church, turns around, and walks to the back doors of the church and throws open the doors of the church. And everybody in the congregation turns and watches them do this. And then Monsignor Pope says, what we're doing here this morning is for the people out there. We want the doors open as a gesture that says strangers will be welcome. Inquirers, newcomers will be welcome. We want them to be there. We expect them to be here. And we're not going to put any barriers. We're not going to close any doors to keep them from coming. It was one of those goosebump moments where they said, this is who we are. We are not here for ourselves. We are here for the people who aren't here. And we have got to symbolically open the doors of the church to say to everyone, there's a place for you here. You are welcome here. Can you understand why this church has kind of turned a corner and become evangelistic? Because that mindset has been brought to them. So, meaningful is this perspective that says we expect this to happen. Okay? It's not the unusual moment when there's a newcomer here. It's not the unusual moment when there's a guest here. It's not an unusual moment when an inquirer is here. Every Sunday, every time we gather, we should expect them to be here. And because we expect them to be here, we have got to constantly be on our game. Okay, there are no off Sundays. There's no Sunday where we can say, well, I think we'll just coast this Sunday and let the visitors fend for themselves. No. Every Sunday morning, we have an opportunity here on this field, in this campus, on this building, to minister to the folks who have come through our doors. And so we've got to be on our game, we've got to be welcoming, we've got to make our values congregational and denominational transparent. We've also got to make our message accessible. We've got to speak in ways that people understand. And we've got to provide specific ways for people to connect and to take the next step in the spiritual life. As I was getting ready this week, I came across a new hymn. And I'm not going to sing it, but I thought we could read the words. The words here are powerful. And it speaks about this attitude of what does a congregation think like that is going to behave in this way, to be a meaningful congregation. Read the words with me. This is Come Brother, Sit With Me by David Wright. Come brother, sit with me, sharing this simple bread. Come sister to my home, drink till you've had your fill. Who gives these gifts of friendship and table? None but the living God. Come stranger, walk with me, sharing the narrow road. Come wise one, talk with me, show me the better way. Who gives these gifts of wisdom and wonder? None but the living God. Go, children, sing with joy, praising the risen Lord. Go, servants to the world, born on the Spirit's strength. Who gives these gifts of worship and service? None but the living God. So we're going to think this morning about what's it going to take for us to do the same thing that Monsignor Pope does at Holy Comforter St. Cyclones. What is it going to take for us to fling open the door symbolically of our community of faith so that people, newcomers, guests, inquirers, visitors, will feel welcome here and will have a chance to connect? At your tables, there's a goldenrod piece of paper. And on that goldenrod piece of paper, there are some questions that I want you at table to work on for the next 10 minutes. The questions are these. Let's pretend, because we're running out of time. So, how do you do this? Well, here's the problem. We always want somebody else to do this. Our expectation, let's vote. Word of welcome, a nice, good welcome to people would be instrumental in getting people back. Show of hands who agree with that. Everybody agrees. Who's responsible for this? Well, let's make John responsible for it. Let's make Doug responsible for it. Let's make Cheryl responsible for it. We all agree that that's the key. Very few of us are willing to step up and take responsibility. Part of it is it's just overwhelming. So here's a model for a way to do this. It's called pastoring your pew. Before worship begins, take the initiative. Let me say it again. Take the initiative to introduce yourself to the people who are sitting beside you and around you on your pew. Doesn't make any difference if they're longtime members of the church or first-time visitors. You become responsible for who's on your pew. Not complicated. If they're sitting beside you, around you, introduce yourself. Second, let me get these up for a second. Help them to become acquainted with the others who are sitting beside you and around on your pew. If you're sitting with someone who's you know really, really well and there's somebody new on your pew, make the connection. Make the introduction. If there are visitors on your pew, ask them if there's anything you might do to help them become more comfortable during their visit. Offer to explain anything that's going to happen in the worship service. Explain kind of what to expect. Ask them if they have any questions about the service of the church that you might be able to answer or get answered for them. We're not depositories of untold information, but you can always find someone who can. I stay down front every Sunday morning after each services for this purpose, to visit with anybody who might have any questions about anything. There are ministers at the doors. You can always take someone by the hand and lead them to a minister. There are ministers strategically position themselves around the sanctuary every Sunday morning for this purpose. But it's not just us. Okay? There are lots of folks you could get information from. Don't interrogate them. Okay? Don't grill them. Just welcome them warmly and open the door should they want to go further. Then when service is over, remember their names. Okay? I know that's hard. Write it you learn somebody's name, remember the name, so at the end of the service you can talk to them by name. You can often introduce them to one of the ministers. As we said, the ministers are strategically positioned around the sanctuary every Sunday morning just for this purpose. The day's preaching minister always stays down front to visit with people. Other ministers always at the doors. We look good, and we're there to look good, but we're also there to work. We're also there to answer questions. Don't ask them how they like the service. Everybody raise your right hand. And solemnly begin at me. I will never ask a visitor how they like the service.
How they like the service.
That's like asking someone you just met, do you like me? We would never do that in an interpersonal relationship, and yet we put people on the spot all the time. Don't ask them, so did you like the service? They got the smell of desperation all over them. Okay? So don't ask them that. Do invite them back. Do always invite them back. Invite them back to other activities. If there's an activity following the service, invite them. Okay? So pastoring your pew says everybody is responsible for this ministry, and everybody's got a part to play. And your part of the game to play are those people who are on your pew. This is really talking about us here at Northway. When people come to when somebody sits on your pew, greet them. Don't ignore them. Okay? Avoiding that feeling that you have when people don't talk to you. Here are the core values. Here are the core values of hospitality. Visitors are a gift from God. First core value. Second, we have the privilege of influencing people on their journeys of faith. Every Sunday morning here on campus, we can lead people to Christ here on campus, and we can help people find a place where they can grow and serve. A congregation named Briarwood did some research after a fast-growing church, evangelistic, did all this stuff right, and they did some research when they were done to ask, what was it that moved people from the status of a first-time visitor to church membership? And what they said was interpersonal contact. That was the key. It was just people reaching out and making sure that people were being welcomed, were being introduced, and were making a connection. The intriguing thing they found out in their experience, this is one church's experience, the number of times there needed to be contact between a first visit and church membership were 20 contacts. They got it down to 20 contacts. It's not a one-time contact. It's not a one-time welcoming somebody. It took 20 interpersonal contacts, 20 different people in the life of the church before a person felt comfortable enough to make that their church family. If you think about that, that means whose job is this? Everybody's. Everybody's. We can't get away sitting on a pew and acting as if somebody else will take care of us. We can't sit on a pew and say somebody else will greet them. We can't sit on a pew and say, I came for me and not for them, so I'm not going to mess with them. If we do that, we're going to get what we deserve. But if we can begin to turn the corner to begin to relate to other people in the way that we want to, in fact, here's the key. Here's the key to what we're talking about this morning. The golden rule. It ain't rocket science. This is not complicated. Treat other people the way that you yourself want to be treated. If we would do that with everybody here in this room this morning, if we would do that with everybody who's going to join us in the sanctuary here in a moment or two, I think we will accomplish this hospitality ministry in a dynamic way. But it's got to be all of us. Okay? One person who scowls at a visitor, one person who towers over someone sitting in a pew in their place. Somebody said that. I remember. I'm not going to name the church. It's in Plainview, Texas, where we had a dear old lady in the church. She's now with the Lord, Miss Adela Drew. She introduced herself to me. She said, preacher. My first son, she said, preacher. She said, I'm the one who hangs the preachers by their necks. I thought, she was the church historian, and so she would take a picture and then hang us by our necks on the wall. But she introduced herself as the church member who hung the preachers by their necks. Adela had a pew that she always sat in, and we talked about this. Even talked with her person about this. Never changed. If somebody was sitting there, she'd walk down the center aisle, come to the pew where the person, and finally the yes, and they would move, and we would never see them again. But it's just one person not being kind. Just one person not being nice. Just one person coming not prepared to minister can create a mechanism that subverts what we're trying to do. Okay? So, golden rule. We're about to go into worship. Do unto others as you would have them do